podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Harry Sethi. And after a 4-0 thumping of Lask on Thursday evening saw the Reds guarantee top spot of their Europa League group and a place in the last 16 of the competition, Klopp's side turn their attention back to the Premier League this weekend as Fulham arrive at Anfield on Sunday. Following the positive result away to City last week, Liverpool will be keen to climb back to the top of the table and remind those sides around them that the title credentials they have are real this season. On the pod this week, I'm delighted to welcome on Sarah Keig from Fulham Lillies, a group for female Fulham fans and allies doing great work around the club to make the game more inclusive for all. Welcome on, Sarah. Good to speak with you.
Thanks, Harry. Great to be here.
Fulham, I was talking just before we started recording, actually, there's always been quite an interesting discussion over the past few seasons with, obviously I think the club's previous promotions to the Premier League and some of the criticism around the approaches they took on those different times. And then this latest promotion to the Premier League seeming more sustainable or done in a more sustainable way. And before we get into this season, really, I wanted to just ask you to cast your mind back to the end of last season, finishing 10th in the Premier League. I think, quarterfinals of the FA Cup, probably a highlight as well. Mitrovic, naturally starring as the top goal scorer with about, I think, 15 in all comps last season. I just want to get your opinion. What was your view come the end of the season on how the club was progressing? And I suppose we can also sort of move in from after that onto what were the areas where you thought the club needed to focus on to kick on?
I think, any Fulham supporter that you speak to would have been very surprised, pleasantly surprised with what we achieved last season. The previous two campaigns where we'd come up and we'd gone down, we'd come up through the playoffs. We as Fulham supporters sort of knew we really didn't have a Premier League team. So it wasn't, as much as you want to go up and stay up and be in the Premier League, it wasn't a great surprise when we came back down. But last season was different. We, absolutely tore through the Championship. We, I think it was 3 games we won 7-0. There were 2 games back to back where we won 6-2. It was a very different team and we went up as champions. And I think we all knew, this time we've got a team here who can stay up. But knowing the Premier League and knowing the other teams that you're up against, I do think that most supporters thought we'd still not necessarily be in a relegation battle, but, if we finished 4th or 5th from bottom, we'd be happy with that. We stayed in the Premier League, but that was it. So none of us could see the fantastic season that we had. You mentioned that, we finished 10th. We nearly broke our Premier League points record. We finished on 52. The record's 53. We won 15 games, which is a record for Fulham. We were 20 minutes away from a semi-final at Wembley, the FA Cup. It just exceeded all expectations for Fulham fans. And I think it was, like you say, we had Mitro, but we didn't change too much. The main spine of the team remained the same, but they bought well. We brought in Willian, we brought in Andreas Pereira, and we brought in João Palhinha. So, those three players really added something, especially João Palhinha.
No, of course. Yeah, I think we'll come on to talk about him a little bit more. I think it's only fair. And yeah, I actually was casting my mind back to last season, and it wasn't a great one for Liverpool in terms of sort of in contrast with their previous seasons. Obviously, I think there was probably an acceptance a little bit into the season that actually maybe some of those midfielders had gone a little bit older, a little bit quicker than perhaps management had expected. And that Fulham game, the opening game of the season, actually for Liverpool, I remember that really illustrated that, I thought, in terms of the way in which Fulham had a really aggressive approach to that game, really physical, I think outran Liverpool, which at that stage was sort of like a real shock to a lot of Liverpool fans. But then I think actually as the season unfolded, it became less of a shock. But I think that was the approach that we saw from Fulham throughout the entire season, even sort of making the most of those first few games back after the break for the World Cup as well, getting some valuable points there. But I remember we're speaking with some of the guys from Fulhamish in previous pods, for example, talked about Scott Parker, previous managers, talking about the need to bolster the squad, maybe managers having a little bit of unhappiness with the lack of investment that had gone. And you mentioned some of those players who came in into obviously Willian and João Palhinha being some of the standouts as well. I want to ask, last season you mentioned lots of high points. Were there particular results for you that stick in your mind in terms of results that illustrated just how Fulham were playing last season?
I think the Chelsea games are definite highlights. They're local rivals, and we're always keen to beat them. So to beat them at the Cottage, which we did, and then to go to Stamford Bridge and draw there. There are some draws which, when you leave, you feel like you've won a game. There are some draws that, when you leave a game, you feel like you've lost. And that was definitely one of those where it felt like a win to us. It's shown how far we'd come. We very rarely beat Chelsea. I think, I know Luis Boamorte, who's now the assistant manager, scored the winning goal the last time we beat them about 20 years ago. So, they come round very, very few and far between, but they're great moments when they do. They really are. And obviously our other local rivals are Brentford, and beating Brentford 3-2 at the Cottage, Mitrovic, 90th minute winner. It's the Roy of the Rovers stuff in a local derby, really, isn't it? Your number 9 heads the winner in right at the death. So they were the games really that, and I think more so the Chelsea games where we thought, this is different. This is a different team, a different mentality, and we're really here to stay this season.
And in terms of players who were key to that success last season, we'll probably come on to talk about sort of the Mitrovic-shaped hole in Fulham when we talk about this season. So maybe let's leave him out for a little bit. Hard to leave out the top goal scorer. But who were the other players for you who you felt really gave a big impression of themselves last season and helped Fulham ultimately achieve that 10th place finish?
I think João Palhinha mentioned him.
Sure.
He literally, after 2 games, it just felt like he had been in that team forever. He didn't miss a beat. You do find with a lot of European players or overseas players, when they come to the Premier League, it is a lot faster, it is a lot tougher, it's a lot more physical. And you do feel that some of them, we've seen it, they sort of maybe struggle for the first season, or they're trying to find their feet. He didn't miss a beat at all. He was straight into that squad, and it made such a difference. And I think because of that, it brought the best out in other players around him. Harrison Reed last season, he's always been a good player for Fulham. He was really great last season for us. And Tim Ream was another guy who, he's sort of, I think he's 36 now. So he was 34, 35. And whilst he's always been great for Fulham, very loyal player and always done well, he last season was exceptional. He was playing some of his best football, and he got recalled to the US men's national team on the back of it. And I think he was the most surprised when he got a call to go to the World Cup. So for me, they were the sort of some of the standouts, but everybody really upped their game. And I think most of the credit has to go to Marco Silva for the work that he's done at Fulham. It really does.
I was going to ask, actually, I think Marco Silva is sort of interesting how he's developed as a manager, and sort of how his approach and how he's getting his teams to play has probably evolved over the years as well. I mean, like, based upon what you were used to seeing from Fulham prior to the promotion and then what you saw last season, I mean, like, how do you think Marco Silva actually managed to get so much out of the team? Was there sort of a change in approach, trying to be like a bit more of a counter-attacking side last season, or was there anything else that you noticed that you think was sort of the key change that Silva made?
I think one of the key changes was the fact that we won the championship, but then and we won it in a fantastic, like you say, very counter-attacking style. But we were relying a lot more on the forwards, counter-attacking, getting the goals. Last season, he completely changed the tactics. So even though we had the same players near enough, the tactics were completely different. And, there was a lot of, it was very much building up from the back. So making sure every part of the spine worked from the back through the midfield. The midfield was vital for us last season. And then obviously into Mitrovic. And with Mitrovic, we had a great goal scorer who, I mean, he got a lot of people sort of forget about the assists that he got last season as well. He improved his all-over game as well. He changed as well. So he wasn't just the front man, but, his hold-up play, bringing other players in, was key as well to how we played.
I was going to say, I remember certainly in the games against Liverpool as well. I remember just his ability to, even if it wasn't creating a chance for himself, just like be a physical presence, like cause a nuisance, hold the ball up, wait for others to join him. I think that's definitely an aspect of his game that he really, really improved on. So, no, I think it's really impressive to obviously see the progress that Marco Silva had made last season. And then I guess at the end of the season, where were the areas where you thought that the side needed to strengthen if they were going to be able to kick on in terms of, and this is, I'm guessing this is obviously prior to the emergence of the Saudi Pro League and the fact that obviously Mitrovic ends up leaving the club, that we can definitely talk about when we talk about this season and maybe some of the struggles to adapt without him. But there's a Mitrovic obviously, and then João Palhinha who nearly departed as well, as we all saw from some of the airport footage. Aside from those two, for the minute, where were the areas where you thought, okay, if we're going to kick on from here again, it's probably going to have to be these areas where we just reinforce a little bit?
At Raising Cane's, we're hyper-focused on being the best at what we do and getting it right every time. Cook-to-order chicken fingers, cane sauce, crinkle-cut fries, coleslaw, Texas toast, iced tea and lemonade. It's our one love. But is the hype real? Yeah, it's real good. Raising Cane's chicken fingers, one love. Next time, order with our app or online.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
I think for us, defence was an area that we really needed to sort of look at. Whilst we've got, great defenders there at the moment, if you sort of look at the age of Tim Ream, he's, I hope, it's not his last season, but it probably will be his last maybe full season, and then maybe next season just be used possibly to back up to whoever. Midfield, even though, we sort of had Zhao, and somebody that is a very underrated player is Bobby De Cordova-Reid. Bobby has played in nearly every position except for goalkeeper for us at some point. He's a very underrated player, and he's a great player. But I still feel that we needed to strengthen in midfield. At that time, as you said, with regards to players up front, we had Mitro. We've also got Carlos Vinicius and Rodrigo Muniz, both young Brazilians. And we felt that, working alongside somebody maybe like Mitro, actually they could develop. You could see the potential there, but it was just, developing them and bringing them on. And I think, so that's why I wasn't too concerned about, getting somebody up front, because I felt that we had a player in Mitro who was still, he's 28, 29, still had a few years left on his contract with us. He could use his expertise and knowledge to bring others on that we already have in the squad. Obviously, that all changed in the summer, and I've never, ever, in all the years I've supported Fulham, I've never, ever known such a disruptive pre-season as the one that we had last season.
And I was going to say, in terms of sort of the disruptions to pre-season, obviously the want away, I think Mitrovic made it pretty plain that he wanted to leave quite early. And I'd say, I'd get your opinion on it, but it didn't seem like it was the most respectful way to do things. But I think he was just very keen to go over there and get the payback, I imagine. But how do you think fans felt about that departure in particular? Given all that he's done for the club, but as you say, you were hopeful that he would stay there and help bring others on. Talk a bit about that disruption to preseason, given the emergence of the Saudi Pro League and the late move from Bayern, I suppose, for another key player in Yapalinha.
Yeah, you can't begrudge somebody going and supporting their family, and with Zhao, going to a club where he could probably, win Bundesliga, win champion, or be in the mix for winning the Champions League, that sort of thing. So you can't begrudge players. It's the same, if we were offered huge amounts of money in our own jobs to go and move. But I just feel that with Mitrovic, it was the manner in which he did it. He said that he wasn't going to play for Fulham ever again. He would never play for them. It was like a petulant child sulking. And from Fulham's point of view, I was really impressed with the way that they said, okay, you can go, but, you've literally just signed a new contract with us. So we're going to make sure if you go, we're getting money for you. And, I completely agreed with that, he had an obligation to Fulham. He'd only that season signed a new deal with us. And knowing the money that was being thrown around by the Saudi Pro League, 25 million was a bargain for him. So, I think we got about 50 million in the end, which from a business point of view, if you look at it from that point of view, it was excellent business. We bought him for 27 million. We'd had him for 4 or 5 seasons. He definitely, got us out of the Championship and helped us to stay in the Premier League last year. So from a business point of view, I think it was good business. But obviously, as fans, we don't think with our head. We very much think with our hearts. And I feel that the sending off at Manchester United, the fans backed him, the fans supported him through that. And it was just a bit of a kick in the teeth when mere weeks later, he, really turned his back on us and, just acted the way that he did.
Yeah, no, I think it's always, I think, in the manner of the departures. I think, to your point, certainly with Jaap Paulinho, I moved to a club like Bayern Munich. You'd understand the attraction for the player. I think it's the timing is always, I think, quite insulting when bigger clubs come in quite late in the window, usually due to a lack of good preparation on their side, right? And then they just try and pluck pivotal players from teams where they think it's possible to get them. I always think that's a bit, unpleasant. Not necessarily Paulinho's fault, but it's unpleasant. And then Mitrovic, I think you're right. With you would have hoped that, given the attachment to the club, the relationship there, the backing, as you mentioned, from the fans, that it would have been handled a bit better. But I'm not altogether surprised at the way in which that went. And I think obviously Liverpool had a number of players who departed for the Saudi Pro League in the summer as well. And I think some more disappointing than others. I think particularly the captain's departure, I think was quite disappointing in terms of sort of the person he projected himself to be. I think it's just, it's unpleasant. But again, I think it's not just football. You're seeing the money being thrown around for some soft power from that league across multiple sports at the moment, right? So it's clearly going to be a disruptive factor in future windows as well. And if we look to the other side, then, the knowledge that these players were moving on, you mentioned obviously the need to strengthen the defence, but suddenly there comes a need to, first of all, hope Paulinho can sort of right himself in terms of sort of just mentally get back in the position to contribute properly for the team. And then also, I suppose, looking to address the attacking void, right, that's left by Mitrovic. No easy task. In terms of the players that have come in or came in the last windows, Alex Iwobi from Everton for about 25 million euros. Looks like Calvin Bassey, centre-back from Ajax, young centre-back. Timothy Castagna from Leicester as a right-back option. And Raul Jimenez from Wolves, again, towards the end of his career, 32 years old, 6.4 million euros. And Adama Traore as well on a free transfer, I believe it was, from Wolves. In terms of those transfers, what did you make of those in terms of addressing the needs that Fulham had? And do you think there's still a need to go out in the January window and pursue more, given just some sort of the late departure of the likes of Mitrovic?
Yeah, I definitely think, and I'm hopeful that we will be going out in January and spending some of the money that we got from Mitrovic on an attacking player. Jimenez, £5 million, based on the player that he was, obviously that looks a bit of a bargain, but sadly I think his recovery from his head injury, he isn't the player that he was. I actually haven't been too disappointed with him because whilst he has only scored the one goal for us, he scored, I think when he's been away with Mexico in the 3 or 4 games he's played, he's scored 3 or 4 goals. So, he's still got it there. It's still in him. He just hasn't managed to sort of get it in the Premier League. But he does offer something that other players that we've got, I mentioned Vinicius earlier, necessarily doesn't. So whilst, he might not be scoring goals, his assists and his holding up the game and his distribution, I think he does bring something, but he's no Mitro replacement, which I think a lot of people thought he might be, which is unfair on him, I think. But based on the fact that, as you just said, towards his end of his career, paid $5 million. I think he's been a great addition. I just really hope he gets some more goals. I think we're all sort of willing it. And when I think we cheered so much at Aston Villa, not just because it was a goal, but he got the goal. It was really pleasing for us. Iwobi has been great. He's been really, really good. I've been very impressed with him. I think a lot of people were a bit, really? And
he is one that divides, isn't he? I think he seems to divide opinion.
Yeah, and especially, we paid I think what you said, 25 million euro, approximately 22 million pounds for him. And people were like, really? Is he worth that much? But yeah, from what I've seen, yeah, he's a great player. And, he got a goal against Wolves on Monday night. So, and I think we'll see more to come from him. He's been playing really, really good. The thing with Calvin Bassey is we've had quite a bit of injury. So he's been playing out of position really for him. He's been playing more on the right, where I think he's more suited to playing on the left. So the first couple of games that he was playing for us, he didn't play that great. He came in for Diop, who's been injured, and he didn't play that great. But he's really got into it and he's been playing quite well. So I do think that once Diop's back and we possibly move him to his more favoured left side, I think he'll be really, really great player for us.
Yeah, I think he's always one that, looked promising from sort of the glimpses I saw of him at Ajax, and definitely sort of the physical sort of talent is there as well, in terms of sort of his ability. And similar with Iwobi, I think there was always a perception, I think, of Iwobi as a real solid customer in terms of the amount of work that he would put in, sort of just how hard he would apply himself for the team. I think Willian's another one who's surprised me as well, actually, the way in which he's come back to having more of an influence than I thought he would at this stage in his career on occasion. So we'll come on to talk about him as well. But moving into this season then, and once you get through that disrupted preseason, like you mentioned, all the focus is obviously on results. What have you made of the start of the season? As I say start, we're already a decent chunk of the way in, obviously. Currently, I think it's 14th in the league at the moment. Maybe that's am I right? Yes, 14th in the league, but it's all really tight there. So I think that a win for sides around that position in the table right now really does move you quite a way up the table, to be honest. So just wanted your opinion on how the season started. Any things that you notice in terms of sort of like tweaks that Marco Silva may have made given the change in personnel, things like that?
I think at the end of last season, we were hopeful that, because obviously we didn't see the Mitro Polinia thing happening. So I think we're all hopeful that by in the summer and we could sort of look to do what maybe Villa, Brighton and Brentford have done. We could look to push on and hopefully start looking maybe at some sort of European football. Obviously, Mitro was a huge loss. I think we're all resigned to the fact that João will leave, whether that happens in January, whether that happens in the summer. But, we know that he's going to go on to bigger and better things and he deserves it. So I think once that happened and we lost Mitro, we reassessed really. And I think it was just, if we get 10th again, I think we'd be happy with that. Recent form has shown that, if we hadn't beaten Wolves on Monday night, we'd have been right down in it with the sort of the few teams that are down there. And I think we'd have found ourselves in a relegation battle. As you mentioned, it is still tight. And, a win on Sunday, she says, could see us go a point off 10th place. So even though we're not far off halfway through the season, it is still very, very tight round there. And I think based on what's happened, the injuries that we've had, the lack of a striker, mid-table, sort of 13th, 12th, 13th, that's sort of where I think we're looking to be at the moment. And I think most people would take that at this point in time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to hear. So that obviously how expectations had to be reassessed given the disruption, just in pre-season. You say you weren't expecting Mitra to leave, and also obviously Yapolina, as you say, that's sort of the suggestion being that he will soon leave. I have to say, actually, I think when it comes to scouting for that position, Fulham have done pretty well over the recent years. I think Yapolina is obviously an excellent player. I also remember in the past, actually, Anguissa being a player who really sort of impressed me for Fulham, and wasn't really surprised to see him obviously end up at Napoli and become such a integral player for them as well. So here's hoping, obviously, that the scouting team have already got a list of potential alternatives, because they have managed to sort of do pretty well when it comes to sort of like filling that position, in my opinion. And has there been a game you think this season that really symbolizes sort of the challenges Fulham have faced, given the disruption to the team, and also the positive side of things as well? So is there a game where you look at the season and go, okay, well, that's what we look like this season when everything clicks, as Silva's trying to sort of make it work, given some of the changes he's had to deal with? And is there a game that you look at and go, well, that sort of symbolizes the issues we've got this season?
I think for us, in previous seasons when we've come up and gone straight down, we weren't beating the teams that we should beat. Right. There are certain teams on paper that you think, these are the people that you need to beat in order to sort of stay clear of relegation and to really, move up. And this season and last season, we are beating those teams. So we beat Everton, Luton, Sheffield United. So the teams that you're sort of almost expected to beat, we are beating, whereas previously we'd have maybe struggled against them.
A draw away to Brighton, another good result, in the context of the season as well.
Yeah, and beating Wolves, that's another team that you should have looked towards, and you think, these are the teams that we need to beat, or at least get a point from them in order to establish ourselves in the Premier League. We haven't done that previously, but this season we are doing it. We're grinding those results out. I think the one really that, and it's no surprise really because it's Man City, but going to the Etihad and losing 5-1, that was a tough one because we played really well against Arsenal prior to that. There were other games that we'd had where we sort of thought, okay, we haven't got Mitra, but we can do okay here. But then it was very much back to reality at Man City. We went 1-0 down. We equalised. They got a second goal just before half time, which afterwards, it was deemed that it had been offside. But we were only 2-1 down at half time. We were still in the game. We were still playing. Second half, we came out and we just lost it. It ended up being 5-1 defeat. So I think it's that really, to me, highlighted, there's still a long way to go. And I know it's Man City, but that was the one for me.
It is the highest bar, I think, in the Premier League to clear at the moment. I think, that's actually, I think the Liverpool draw with City last weekend. I mean, you'd think I would keep an eye on what City are doing, but I didn't really realize that ended at 23 game on sort of win streak at home. They really have built a real fortress there in terms of the results, maybe if not the atmosphere. But Haaland, I think, is a good example of someone who can take those kind of games away from you, right? Where you're thinking, okay, it's quite a tight game, and a quick fire brace from him or a hat trick in the case of the game against Fulham, and it suddenly looks a lot worse. I do actually remember, now that you mentioned it, that Ake offside being particularly egregious. And it was just before half time, which he says a really pivotal time to concede as well. So I wouldn't be too disheartened by it, but I understand what you're saying in terms of the ability to compete. I think it is positive, as you mentioned there, that picking up those wins against sides in and around you in the table that you need to get just to build that solid foundation. I think that's a real positive sign so far. And I think, to your point, I mean, getting those reinforcements in January to a bit more firepower, maybe just to help ensure those wins, I think is going to be crucial. It sounds like it. One thing I was reading recently was obviously about this. With Mitrovic leaving, guest goals are the sort of the end result you're trying to replace, but he's obviously the penalty taker as well for Fulham. Wondered sort of how that problem has been tackled since his departure. Who's ended up filling his boots in terms of becoming the guy on the spot? Was it Willian, based upon what I've seen against Wolves?
Yeah, well, the game on Monday night, that was the first time we'd actually had a penalty this season.
Then, okay.
So to get two in one game,
yeah.
and we were the same as you. We were like, well, who's going to take it? We'd sort of gone Andreas Pereira because last season, I think Mitro it was during Mitro's 8-game suspension. We got a penalty and Pereira stepped up and took it. So we were like, oh, okay. And then we were all quite surprised when Willian stepped up to take it. But what sort of surprised us, Mitro wasn't that great at penalties. I think it was literally a 50-50 record with him. So we've been screaming out for a penalty taker. And earlier in the season, we played Tottenham in the Carabao Cup and it went to penalties. And every single Fulham player scored the penalty. And we were like, why was Mitro taking all the penalties when quite clearly everyone else can take them?
Yeah. What was Mitrovic's technique, Adam? In my head, I imagine it was just hitting it as hard as he could into a particular corner, or is that doing him a disservice? Was he a stutterer?
It was low and into the bottom corners.
Okay.
He didn't stick to the same corner, but it was hit it hard, low and into the bottom corners.
Yeah.
But I mean, he did have some unfortunate ones. There was one where he went to take it, he slipped, and as he slipped, his foot double touched the ball. The ball went in the back of the net, but because there was a double touch, it didn't count. So there was a few times where he was sort of a little bit unlucky, keeper save. But yeah, he wasn't that great at penalties. And I saw a few weeks ago, actually, when he was playing in Saudi, he missed a penalty there. So it continues.
Yeah, it's always an interesting one. Strikers who don't quite fancy penalties. I mean, I think Salah for Liverpool means, well, not really a striker despite what he's doing. And yeah, I think his record's probably really good, actually. I think there's probably more made of it than isn't. But he's missed some as well. And I think at times you do see it and you just go, well, I'd assume you can place this anywhere. Why are you just running up and blamming it? I don't understand why that's the.
Although on Monday night, Willian did that whole, when
stutter.
They run up and they do the little tapping and then they stop and I was just like, will you just hit it?
I can't get used to it. It's always just the dread of the slow. I know Pogba wasn't the first to do it, but yeah, that slow run up. I mean the skip. I mean, obviously we've seen the Jorginho skip technique as well, and I know there's something to be admired about just running up and leathering it. Yeah,
there was for me years and years and years ago. There was a West Ham player called Julian Dix. And he was the best penalty taker I've ever seen because it was like a rocket. And even if it went near the keeper ended up in the net with the ball. It was just hit with such precision.
Yeah, no, I don't think back. I think even though Salah took the majority, I think the penalty that live in my mind to the sort of the Klopp era Liverpool probably. The same shootout, actually. I think it was against Chelsea in the Carabao Cup or something. I think it was Kepa came on for the pens and Van Dijk. Like Kepa sort of moves to one side of the net, like to sort of go, I know you're going this side. And then Van Dijk did go that side, just hit it top corner. And then I think there was a Fabinho Panenka. I've always liked the Panenka for those who actually are ballsy enough to do it, but it is a very you can look incredibly embarrassed if it does go wrong. But again, I think as you said, I mean the first penalties of the season came both together in the last game, so looks to have found a replacement there. Now looking towards the game itself, then I mean away at Liverpool, this is always a difficult game anyway, I think. But in terms of how you expect Marco Silva to approach it based upon what you've seen of away games against sides in the top six so far this season? How do you think he will approach it? And if you have any thoughts on what you've seen of Liverpool this season, yeah, it'd be great to hear them.
Hey, this is Chuck the Goat from Goat USA. I wanted to break into your podcast and tell you about the new Goat USA store at Garden State Plaza. Check us out next to Seasons 52 across from Fogo de Chao. Be the goat by wearing the goat and gift your loved ones with the greatest apparel of all time. Heavenly soft and incredibly durable, Goat USA sweatshirts and joggers are the most outstanding gifts this holiday season. So come see us at Garden State Plaza. And if you don't know, you soon will. Goat USA. Apparel for kids and adults. Chuck out.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
I think it's going to be a tough game, that there's no doubt about it. As you said, just the fact going to Anfield is always tough. But I think, we can still sort of take some hope from going there. We, as you said, the first game of the season last year, we drew 2-2 with Liverpool. When we played you at Anfield, it was only 1-0, and it was, from obviously our point of view, a very soft, dubious penalty that beat us. So I think we can definitely take hope that we can stay in the game. It will be interesting to see what Marco does. Kenny Tete, who's been out for quite a while, he was on the bench on Monday, came on. So I think, there's a possibility that he might start, which is a shame because Timothy Castagna has been playing well in that position. But, I think Kenny just seems more experienced, and some of the performances he put in last season against the Chelsea, Arsenal, I just think he maybe deserves to come back. If Diop is fit, which I think he might be, it would be good to see him back and maybe drop Tim Ream and move Calvin Bassey across to see what that partnership would be like. Tim Ream, as much as we all love him, and he has been a great player for Fulham, he sort of gave the penalty away on Monday. He's made a couple of mistakes, and that's been the biggest frustration for Fulham, I think, this season, that a lot of the goals we've conceded have been through our errors. So it's just, I just think getting a more solid base in defence. But do you risk that at Anfield, or do you stick with what you've been going through for the last few weeks? That's difficult. João Palhinha will be back. He was off from suspension. Tom Kearney played his first 90 minutes on Monday and was our man of the match. He was exceptional. He was really great. So I'd like to see him maybe start. Apparently he doesn't have the legs in him
right.
to play 90 minutes. He did on Monday, but it could be he comes on and then, maybe there's a sub 60, 70 minutes. But I think there's an opportunity to make some changes and to really strengthen because people are returning from injury. Whether Marco will take that risk at Anfield, that's the thing.
And we talked about, obviously, I think last season Liverpool I think were much more susceptible to being sort of run over, to be honest, by teams. If you could outrun them, then you could really get a grip on the game in a way in which we hadn't seen a sort of previous Liverpool sides under Klopp. Certainly, there's obviously been a rebuild of Liverpool's midfield this season, although still lacking that real defensive sort of like top number 6, I suppose, just to screen things. So sometimes people do still get the freedom to run through. I want to ask you, just if you've seen much of Liverpool this season, what you've made of them at all. If not, don't worry about it, or we can move on. But you just wondered what your perception was of where Liverpool are this season.
They've definitely improved from last season, as you say. There's been a rebuild, and there is always the thought when you do rebuild is, the time it takes to gel and to come in. But I think, it seems to be that they are not quite where they were maybe 3-4 seasons ago, but, they're definitely on the way there. Obviously, you've got a few people that are out, Alisson and Jota, but and they are big misses for you. But I mean, I think I sort of watched some of the game last night.
Yeah.
And, okay, maybe it's not, the opponents weren't the same Premier League level, but they're still a good team. And I just think it showed that you don't necessarily need those players. You now have other players that, you can switch in, which are just as good. And I think Keller played well in goal.
Yeah. No, I think, it's always tough with Keller. I think he got more game time a couple seasons ago, and obviously tough to displace Alisson, who I think is obviously one of the top goalkeepers in the world. So it's like, it feels kind of harsh to well, I'm pretty sure Alisson would have said that, but it's because Alisson's, up there, right? So to hold him to that standard is obviously a tough one for him. But you mentioned Jota. I think, luckily there's some more attacking options that are available. Actually, it was last night actually where I just reminded myself that the Robertson actually has been gone for weeks. Yeah. I think it's the extent to which I think Tsimikas, the Greek international, has done a good job there. Not necessarily missed him too much just yet, but it's almost weird forgetting that he wasn't there as well. But I hear your points there on sort of like the approach Fulham will think about taking here need to be considered. And as you mentioned, the games where you want to be picking up points, where you think that those are going to be the more pivotal ones. There's a home game, obviously, against Nottingham Forest following this match. There's a home game against West Ham as well. Everton in the Cup in a few weeks' time. Burnley, Bournemouth. I mean, there's quite a few games prior to Christmas, and actually just around Christmas, where you think there's points up for grabs there that could really, as we were talking about, see Fulham distance themselves from sort of that pack in the middle of the league. So just want to ask you what your expectations would be for the season then.
I think, as I said, we've definitely reassessed. So, prior, you would hope we would push on. We know that's not going to happen. I think the fact that Marco has just signed a contract extension, I think he wouldn't have done that if he wasn't promised money. So
it's some stability, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think if you'd have asked any Fulham supporter what would be the better signing, a centre forward or Marco, I think we'd all gone Marco, because he's, absolutely changed the club, the atmosphere around the club, and the way that we play. So that's been really important. And I don't think he would have signed unless he hadn't been promised money to buy players. So we're hopeful that in the January window, that, we can maybe get somebody in to replace Mitro. And, who knows, push on. I think realistically, 10th, that again, for me, would be a fantastic achievement. I'm thinking maybe 12th, 13th, and I'd sort of be happy for that. So it's far enough that we're out of the relegation. We're not in a relegation battle, but it just does give us that opportunity based on the first half of the season to just sort of consolidate.
Yeah, exactly. As you say, that word consolidation of the position, I think it's can't be sort of overestimate just how important that is. I think just for the stability, for the investment, for like the consistency. I think that the fact that Silva signed on, as you say, it seems like it's a really positive sign as well. And before we wrap up, Sarah, I did want to ask you, obviously, having you from Fulham Lillies on the pod, just to actually explain a little bit more about sort of what Fulham Lillies have been working on this season, in terms of the different initiatives that you've been leading and supporting. Because I think there's some real interesting topics we covered prior to hitting record that I'd love the listeners to be aware of. Because I think they're issues that don't just affect obviously Fulham fans. I think they're across the entirety of the sport.
Yeah, so the Fulham Lillies was founded in July of 2022. And the aim of the Lillies is to encourage more female participation at football matches. So whether that's attending the men's game as a supporter or attending women's football, or even playing football as a girl or a woman. So it was just really to encourage more female participation in football. So we've run a number of different initiatives. We hold meetups before most home games. There's a little cafe in Bishop's Park, which is right next to the ground. So we meet there, and then lots of other females come along and just sort of chat football, pop in, say hi, and then we all walk to the ground together. So we offer that security so that people can walk to the ground together. One of our ex-players, Joe Bryan, who now plays for Millwall, he very kindly donated £3,000 to the Lillies before he left. And with that money, we have bought some season tickets for Fulham, for Craven Cottage. And so we contact local charities, female-based charities. So sort of we've contacted Ukrainian refugees, domestic violence, care, where young girls are in care. And we offer these tickets to them so that they get the opportunity to come and watch a football match, a Premier League football match. And the Fulham women's team, which is a fifth tier team, so quite a low sort of team, they played at Craven Cottage against Arsenal Academy during the international break, and we purchased tickets for 16 adults and 32 children, which we donated to a local primary school, and they brought the kids along to their very first match, football match. And they watched the Fulham women beat the Arsenal Academy, and it was a fantastic day out for all of the kids and all of the adults as well. So those are the initiatives, and there's lots more things that we're working on as well.
I think it's incredibly worthwhile, obviously, endeavours. I think it's really important to obviously push women's football, and I think actually just very blatantly investment in women's football in general, which still remain to be convinced. But I think there's been some positive commitments over the past few months following the success, obviously, of the England women's team as well. But I think certainly some of the initiatives around like more support for women attending matches as well, and more sort of, I think, actual understanding of sort of like women who are, for example, just breastfeeding or want to breastfeed at matches, I think is a real important area to be addressed as well. I think that's something that you would have imagined had been considered by now, but the fact that it's still across the league, I think actually a pretty not contentious, but an issue that's not been addressed, I think is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of grounds won't even allow under-2s into the stadium. For those that do, they charge them a ticket, which is the same as a junior. Yeah. So, just to take a baby in arms can cost up to £50-60 at some Premier League stadiums. Wembley as well don't allow under-2s. So we spoke before, and I know a lot of people will be listening going, why on earth would you want to take a baby? But it's, for women who have gone to football, they've gone with their dads, they've gone with their brothers, they've gone for 10, 15, 20 years, they then have a baby, and suddenly football says, you can't come anymore. It just, to us, it's like, why? It's not the baby's fault. We need to look at the stadia. We need to look at what can be done to allow these people to still support their teams.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, just a more earnest discussion about what solutions do exist, I think is what we're asking for, right? I think, sort of appreciate the difficulties, but yeah, there needs to be a more meaningful, actual discussion around it. Because at the moment, I think he's just saying there's just this absence of one. But Sarah, yeah, I want to really thank you for coming on and like sharing all your insight into the journey Fulham have been on, I suppose, under Marco Silva, certainly over the past few seasons, and adapting to the disruption of pre-season, which did come out of nowhere for a lot of clubs to deal with. So I think it's impressive to see how Fulham have responded. I think, as you say, investment may be key in January to really kicking on, but I think there's positive signs of a sustainable sort of future here for the club. So thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Harry. Really appreciate it.
And just to wrap this up, for all the listeners who've obviously been enjoying these rival Recon pods throughout the season, it is a busy season. You will no doubt see from whatever network you watch your sports on, festive season usually means we've crammed as many fixtures as possible into the next few weeks, and that's the case. So there'll be more pods coming thick and fast. There'll be another rival Recon ahead of the game away to Sheffield United on the 6th of December, so do join us for that then.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Chuck the Goat from Goat USA. I wanted to break into your podcast and tell you about the new Goat USA store at Garden State Plaza. Check us out next to Seasons 52 across from Fogo de Chao. Be the goat by wearing the goat and gift your loved ones with the greatest apparel of all time. Heavenly soft and incredibly durable, Goat USA sweatshirts and joggers are the most outstanding gifts this holiday season. So come see us at Garden State Plaza. And if you don't know, you soon will. Goat USA. Apparel for kids and adults. Chuck out.